I may have found a way to stop an avoidant from stonewalling for good, but it's going to require us to take a look inside an avoidant's brain. That's weird. There's like a city there, but it's dark and kind of empty. It's looking sort of like a metropolitan area during a power outage. No lights, no movement, no signs of life, just empty streets and towering walls keeping everyone out. This is what happens when an avoidant goes into full stonewalling mode. Their entire emotional infrastructure just shuts down. They've essentially flipped the master switch to off and retreated behind walls that seem impossible to breach. But here's the thing. You can't just bang on those walls demanding that they let you in. You can't stand outside screaming about how unfair it is that the lights are off. That's not how you restore power to a city. That's not how you overcome stonewalling. Instead, you need to understand that each part of this emotional city requires a different strategy to power back on. The wall needs to come down first before anything else can happen. Then the streetlights will start flickering, traffic signals begin working again, residential areas slowly come back to life, the commercial district reopens for business, and finally, you establish the ongoing maintenance that keeps everything running smoothly. Now, the funny part about all of this is that in order to turn the power back on to each one of these aspects, it'll require a completely unique approach. Oh, and let's not mention that if you skip steps or try to rush the process, the whole system can crash again. Okay, so let's walk through this step by step from the perspective of someone standing outside those walls, wondering how the heck you're supposed to get through to someone who's completely shut down. Step 1. You got to break through that wall. All right, so the first thing you see when an avoidant stonewalls is the wall. Every time I think about this, I actually picture Attack on Titan. So in that anime, humanity survives inside these enormous walled cities to protect themselves from giant man-eating titans. That's exactly how avoidants view emotional intimacy. You're the titan. Every time you get close, it activates their primal defense systems. The wall isn't just there for fun, it's survival. So to them, everyone on the outside is a potential invader. All right, and let's get back to reality for a bit. Most people make the mistake of trying to scale these walls or break them down by force. So they pound on them with demands for communication, threats about the relationship ending, or emotional pleas about how much they're hurting. But here's what the research tells us about stonewalling. Dr. John Gottman's lab research shows that when someone is stonewalling, they're experiencing physiological flooding, high stress levels, rapid heart rate, and poor emotional regulation. So once someone's heart rate exceeds about 100 beats per minute, they're unlikely to process or respond constructively. They require at least 20 minutes to return to baseline. So the wall isn't just emotional stubbornness, it's biological protection. Their nervous system has essentially declared a state of emergency. Again, to the avoidant, you are like those gigantic titans in the anime that they're trying to keep out. So what's the strategy here? Well, it isn't force. Obviously, it's space. Space is the avoidance language. When you give them space, you're speaking directly to their nervous system, telling it that the threat level has decreased. You're allowing their heart rate to come down, their stress hormones to regulate, and their higher cognitive functions to come back online. But here's the catch. This isn't the silent treatment. This isn't you withdrawing to punish them. This is strategic space that communicates safety and not abandonment, right? So what does this look like practically? Well, I think my interview with Sophie shows this brilliantly.
You're kind of not as taking offense to, well, why aren't you hanging out with me instead of Rem? But allowing them to do that kind of when they pull back, you pull back a little bit. That you'll find with, especially with avoidant personalities, that works really, really well. And you kind of figured that out.
It works like magic. I think, like, if I really want results,
and the beauty is, if he watches this interview, it will still be effective. I promise you, it will still be effective.
Oh yeah.
Like, dude, I'm telling you, this is what she's doing, and I'm telling you, it's going to work on you. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, and that's basically it.
Now, Sophie nailed the entire strategy in one simple shift. Instead of chasing him when he pulled back, she mirrored his distance. What that likely means is that his nervous system stopped interpreting her as a threat, and when that happens, the wall starts to crack. Step 2, the flickering streetlights. Well, once you've given them space and the wall begins to lower, you'll notice the first signs of life in the city. the flickering streetlights. I love this analogy because to me, it represents the first tentative thoughts about you, but they're never constant. Like a heartbeat that's just starting to return to normal. These lights flicker on and off unpredictably. One of the things you have to realize is that an avoidant who is stonewalling isn't going to just wake up one day and stop stonewalling. You have to give them a reason to. And often the best reason is them seeing you move on from afar. This is where something like social media becomes an incredibly powerful tool. Not as a weapon to make them jealousy, but as a window into your emotional state. When they see you living life incredibly well without them, something shifts in their perception. We see this constantly in our community. People who showcase genuine progress, not performatively, but subtly, often notice that the avoidant will start poking around again. They start watching stories or liking posts or even texting out of nowhere. One of our members even wrote out a full manifesto of rules for what they post during no contact. And one of their biggest rules, always project ungettableness. You're not being petty, you're being perceptively fine without them, and that changes everything. The point is, them seeing you from afar moving on is enough to start those lights flickering. Their brain starts to process, hey, wait, maybe this person isn't the emotional threat I thought they were. Maybe they're not going to collapse without me. Maybe they're actually okay. Those flickering streetlights represent the avoidance starting to reminisce about you, but inconsistently. One moment they're thinking about good times you shared, and the next their defense mechanisms kick back in and the lights go out again. This phase requires a ton of patience because the lights will flicker for a while before they stay on consistently. And that leads us rather nicely to step 3, the traffic signals. All right, the traffic signals represent the avoidant's need to feel in control of how and when emotional exchanges happen. If this system isn't working, they stay withdrawn to avoid what feels like emotional chaos or invasion. Now, here's where most people mess up completely. They assume that since the streetlights are flickering, the avoidant is going to reach out first, but that's not how this works. Internal polling among our community found that 64% of avoidants don't even reach out to you during something like the no contact rule, which basically means you'll often have to make the first move if they stonewall. Which is kind of ironic if you think about it, because to even get inside our city, you have to give them space. But that's actually not the big problem. From what I've observed, people get so caught up in gender rules. Men should reach out first. Women should wait to be reached out to. They're so caught up that they forget one of the fundamental tenets of conversation. What matters isn't who reaches out first. What matters is how good the conversation is and who ends it first. Think of this like a great movie. No one remembers who walked into the scene first, but what you remember is who owned the scene, who had the best lines, and who made the final move. That's the energy you want in your conversations. It's not about initiating, it's about setting the emotional tone and knowing when to exit with grace. But I'm getting off into the weeds. The ultimate question you probably have is, how do you turn the traffic lights back on? Well, it's not so much what you're saying to avoidant. It's more about you identifying their traffic patterns. You don't tell an avoidant how to merge into the lane. You just quietly study the rhythm and adjust your own. Now, the core goal is building a mental model of their emotional stoplights and syncing to their signals without confrontation. Think of it like this. Over a few interactions, you start tracking their patterns like a traffic light system. When do they usually withdraw? What kind of texts make them go quiet? How do they respond when you go emotional versus observational? Then, based on that knowledge, you adjust your output to match their signal. If they're in yellow, which is soft retreat, you pull back to one-sided pressure-free communication. If they're in red, which is total silence, you go radio silent with visible emotional stability on socials. If they show green or unexpected engagement, you do not overcorrect. You just match their energy and keep the lane clear. Or put more simply, when they pull back, you pull back. When they're in, you're in. So the other day, I'm scrolling through my community and I stumble across this post from one of our members. After 2 months of going on dates, I felt a bit more at ease. He asked me to be his girlfriend. So here's to a new relationship. Now, a lot of times when I'm doing an ad like this for the Seiter Super Offer, I'm only showing you the happy end result. Oh hey, look, this person got their avoidant back. Oh wow, this person is now engaged. Oh, now this person is married. And if that's all you saw, you'd probably think that this was easy. But here's the truth. It's not. Making an avoidant regret losing you or even getting over an avoidant takes real work. What you don't see behind these success stories are the late nights spent going through the course library and actually applying the strategies. The breakthroughs that happens when members partner with battle buddies for accountability and support. The live streams where they ask tough questions and get real answers. This isn't about luck. It's about having the right tools. That's why I built the Seiter Super Offer. Right now, for YouTube viewers only, I'm giving you everything you need to get results like this. My complete course library, a private community, weekly live streams. Now, normally I sell all of these things separately, but today you get everything at 50% off. That's a one-time payment of $97. No monthly fees, no hidden costs, just everything you need to make your avoidant regret losing you and reignite their obsession. So, if you're interested, click in the link on the description below and start your transformation today. This is about regulating your need for response, not trying to control their speed. So essentially what you're doing is you're building your own yield schedule. So how long do you give them to respond before trying again? Well, red might be 7 to 10 days. Yellow might be 2 to 3 days. Green is just simply matching their pace. Now, the psychology behind this is that avoidants don't feel safe co-regulating their emotions with others. They prefer internal control. So by studying their rhythm and regulating your response, you become predictable, non-threatening, and attuned without ever triggering their shame or panic. They don't know why, but suddenly you just get them. All right, next up on the list is the residential blocks. So the residential blocks represent the avoidant starting to feel safe enough to let comfort, care, and trust creep back in. So during the stonewalling phase, avoidants are often afraid that closeness will lead to entrapment or judgment. So the strategy to turn these lights back on involves something I called shared memories. And research actually backs this up. According to the National Library of Medicine, rather than increasing positive effect, relationship nostalgia is associated with a movement towards emotional homeostasis. What the heck does that mean? Well, emotional homeostasis means nostalgia doesn't make you feel euphoric or giddy. Instead, it helps you feel balanced, calm, and emotionally steady. So why does that matter for avoidants? Well, avoidants aren't chasing emotional highs. They're terrified of emotional intensity, whether it's positive or negative. So if shared memories make them feel too emotional, they retreat. But research shows that these memories gently stabilize their emotional state. So they move them toward calm familiarity. So instead of triggering their defense mechanisms, nostalgic memories create a sense of emotional safety. Why though? Well, because nostalgia is a solo act. You don't need to be physically present for someone to feel it. Just like that movie Inception, where an idea had to feel like it came from within in order to stick. For avoidance, memories work the same way. When they remember something tender or comforting you once shared, it doesn't feel like you're forcing closeness. It feels like they stumbled upon it themselves. That's why it bypasses their defenses. It's their memory, not your plea. So the residential blocks starts lighting up when they begin to associate you with emotional stability rather than emotional chaos. That's not to say that they can't just turn the lights back off though. That's why you always need to keep the fundamentals consistent. After all, keeping a city's power on takes a lot of work. Let's move on to the commercial district. The commercial district represents the re-engagement of collaboration, or in layman's terms, doing things like making plans together, making decisions together, or sharing certain tasks. During stonewalling, they retreat from anything that smells like responsibility or dependence. This is the first true test to see if all your work of turning the city back on is actually working. I call it the opt-in invitation. You don't assign them a role in your life, you leave a chair open, and you see if they sit down. The concept is offering them a chance to participate in something functional with no stakes or no emotional strings attached. So here's how it works. You invite them into low commitment, co-experimental tasks. You never imply you need them to do it. You just always make it easy to decline. So imagine sending them this text. Hey, I'm trying to fix this IKEA shelf. I'm pretty sure I'm losing the fight. You'd probably make fun of me. Just saying. You're making space for them, but you're not asking them to fill it. Why does this work? Avoidants retreat from unspoken responsibility. This creates a functional reconnection through play, choice, and actually shared competency, not through talking about the relationship. Now, according to self-determination theory, autonomy is key. People are more likely to re-engage when they feel they're choosing to and not being pulled in. So when avoidants start accepting these small invitations, the commercial district begins to come back online. They're testing whether they can collaborate with you without losing their independence, which leads us to step 6, upkeep. Now, the final phase of this isn't just getting the city powered back on. It's keeping it running smoothly. The lights stay on, people return to the streets, and the avoidant doesn't just trust you now, they start to trust the environment. Upkeep is what convinces the avoidant this wasn't a fluke, that the lights aren't about to flicker off again, that the city might actually be livable. The strategy here is consistency without surveillance. Avoidants scan constantly for emotional traps, moments where calm turns into pressure. Upkeep means staying warm, not hot, staying close, not clingy, staying honest, not invasive. It's daily stability that feels organic and strategic. Now, here's why this matters. Avoidants don't regulate with others. They do it alone. But ongoing exposure to emotional consistency actually rewires threat responses. Over time, their system learns that closeness doesn't equal collapse. That's when they start dismantling the walls themselves. Now, you may be wondering why this city metaphor isn't just some sort of feel-good analogy. There's real science behind why changing attachment patterns is so difficult. Check out this beauty I found from Psychology Today. One reason that attachment styles are so hard to change is that by the time you reach early adulthood, a large part of your attachment style is encoded into your brain's biology. You might change your attitudes about relationships, but when exposed to a stressor like relationship conflict, the biological part of your attachment system kicks in and hijacks your thinking. Your brain essentially isn't one place. It's a combination of systems that don't always agree with each other. Information comes into your brain's relay station called the thalamus, which sends information both to your emotional centers and your thinking brain. But the route to emotions is faster. So by the time the avoidance thinking brain figures out what's happening in a conversation, their emotional brain has already triggered stress hormones and declared a state of emergency. The thinking brain then interprets this stress response as confirmation that the threat is real. This is why you can't logic someone out of stonewalling. Their biology is running the show. But here's the fascinating part. When you systematically restore power to their emotional city using the steps we talked about, you're actually working with their biology, not against it. You're giving their nervous system evidence that you're safe, that closeness doesn't mean chaos, and that they can maintain their autonomy while staying connected. In the history of this channel, I've only ever done one other video on stonewalling, and in that video, I talked a lot about this boiling the frog concept. The idea that gradual change is the only kind of change an avoidance nervous system won't revolt against. Well, this whole city metaphor, it's the same principle. You're not flipping all the breakers at once. You're bringing the city back online circuit by circuit so slowly and subtly that the avoidant doesn't even realize they've stopped running. And by the time they do, they're already home. So stopping an avoidant from stonewalling isn't about breaking down their walls with force. It's about understanding that their emotional city has gone dark for biological reasons and systematically restoring power to each district. You start by giving them space to regulate their nervous system. You let them see you're emotionally stable from a distance. You learn their communication patterns and sync to their rhythm. You create opportunities for nostalgic connection. You offer low-stakes collaboration. And finally, you maintain consistent, non-threatening presence that allows their system to rewire over time. And one thing that gets lost in all of this, though, is that not all instances of stonewalling are the same. Sometimes it's used as a coping mechanism for someone who feels overwhelmed or unsafe. But when you approach it from this systematic, biology-informed perspective, you're giving both of you the best chance at restoring genuine connection. The city can come back to life, but it happens one district at a time, and it requires patience, strategy, and a deep understanding of how the avoidant mind actually works. The lights don't all come on at once, but when they do, the city is more beautiful than it ever was before.